Judge William Carter had always believed in order, the absolute integrity of the system, and his own infallible judgment. Every morning, he woke up precisely at 6 a.m., his black robe always perfectly pressed by his meticulous assistant, Emily, who knew better than to speak unless spoken to. The courthouse where he worked was a reflection of his character. Disciplined, organized, and immaculate. Polished mahogany desks, law books arranged alphabetically, and an air of strict decorum. He prided himself on efficiency, order, and the predictability of his courtroom, where he wielded absolute authority. But this morning, a minor inconvenience irritated him. A yellow wet floor sign stood in the middle of the hallway. A janitor was carefully scrubbing a stubborn stain from the marble floor. Couldn't this have been handled before court opened? Carter snapped, his eyes narrowing with irritation. The janitor looked up, his expression calm and respectful despite the scolding. "Apologies, Your Honor. I'll finish quickly." Carter glanced at the embroidered name on the janitor's worn uniform, David Lawson. He dismissed the name from his mind, focusing instead on the important cases awaiting his judgment. Meanwhile, Lawson continued his task in silence. He had long grown used to being overlooked, having spent most of his life in a struggling neighborhood on the outskirts of the city. But few knew that behind his quiet demeanor was an exceptional intellect. After years of studying by the dim light of his tiny apartment, he had earned a law degree from Harvard. Yet, he had deliberately chosen this humble path, believing that true honor lay in integrity, hard work, and resisting a flawed system in his own way. A few hours later, their worlds collided in the courtroom. Lawson was no longer just a janitor. He was the defendant standing before Judge Carter. Carter's eyes flickered with brief surprise before settling into his usual stern gaze. "So, Mr. Lawson, you've decided to represent yourself?" "Yes, Your Honor," Lawson replied calmly, standing tall despite the quiet murmurs in the gallery. Carter adjusted his glasses, smirking. "And what experience do you have in the field of law?" Lawson met his gaze steadily. "Quite a lot, Your Honor." The prosecutor, Michael Reynolds, confidently stepped forward and presented his case. With practiced precision, he painted Lawson as the aggressor, making his guilt seem undeniable. Carter nodded approvingly at Reynolds' compelling arguments. But then, Lawson stepped forward, unwavering. "Your Honor, I request permission to present additional evidence." Carter sighed impatiently. "Proceed quickly." Lawson methodically recounted the events, his account rich in precise details that subtly shifted the atmosphere in the room. Skepticism gave way to intrigue as he laid out a meticulously reconstructed timeline. Then, he presented surveillance footage that directly contradicted the prosecution's claims. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as the video showed the alleged victim, a well-connected businessman, initiating the altercation and attacking Lawson first. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably, flipping through his notes in a futile attempt to salvage his argument. "That's not all," Lawson continued. "The witness statements are inconsistent, and some critical witnesses were never even interviewed." Carter's expression hardened. "Are you suggesting that you understand courtroom procedures better than experienced professionals?" Lawson took a measured breath. "Your Honor, I earned my law degree from Harvard 15 years ago." A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Reynolds paled, while Carter blinked, momentarily thrown off balance. "Why hide such credentials?" Carter demanded, his voice laced with skepticism. Lawson's reply was steady. "I wasn't hiding them. I simply chose not to advertise them. I took this path to maintain my integrity, to distance myself from the corruption and biases within a system I once trusted. Justice should not be dictated by appearances or status." The room fell into a heavy silence. Carter glanced at the case files before him, for the first time sensing something unsettling in his own judgment. Finally, he exhaled, his tone subdued yet firm. "Given the evidence, I have no choice but to dismiss this case. Mr. Lawson, you are free to go." Lawson nodded, gathering his belongings and stepping out of the courtroom as reporters scrambled to capture the shocking turn of events. But for him, the real victory lay in exposing the truth. Through the glass-paneled doors, Carter watched Lawson disappear into the bustling city streets, his mind burdened with thoughts. The system he had once believed to be flawless now seemed riddled with cracks. In the days that followed, he began reviewing past cases with fresh eyes, uncovering patterns of bias he had previously ignored. Over time, Carter's courtroom changed. He became known not just for his authority, but for his pursuit of genuine justice. Meanwhile, Lawson continued his quiet resistance, not through anger, but through unwavering integrity. Two men, two paths, but one shared impact. A transformation of what justice truly means. A story that began with arrogance but ended with awakening. Because justice is not just about the law, it is about seeing the truth beyond the surface and treating people with the dignity they deserve.